Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you all to the fourth EVPA policy webinar of the year. Today's topic will be about the financial instruments under InvestEU. My name is Bianca Polidoro. I'm the policy manager at EVPA, and I will be moderating the webinar. Given the high level of participation in today's session, we have over 100 registered participants. We will be keeping the participants to the webinar muted in order to avoid noise interferences, but we really encourage you all to raise any questions you might have. You can find the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can write your question in the question section at any point. Please do not forget to clearly mention to whom you would like to address it. The last part of today's webinar will consist of an interactive Q&A session, during which we will address your questions to the panelists. If, for some reason, your question has not been answered during the webinar, feel free to contact us via email afterwards, and we will ensure the necessary follow-up. Last but not least, note that this session is being recorded, so you will be able to watch the recording and consult this presentation as of the next week on EVPA's website. Now that these housekeeping details are clear, let me give you a quick word about the European Venture Philanthropy Association. EVPA is a membership organization currently gathering more than 300 members from all across Europe that are interested in or are practicing venture philanthropy and social investment. Our members include foundations, social investors, academics, financial institutions, and service providers. Our policy work relies on two pillars. As a thought leader within the impact space, EVPA monitors and communicates important developments in the sector at European and national level, and voices the concerns and expectations of its network to policymakers. As a catalyst, EVPA connects relevant stakeholders and facilitates conversation and collaboration between them on key policy topics. Through our policy webinar series, we have reached more than 1,000 people since 2014, connecting policymakers and practitioners around key policy developments, such as social impact bonds and public procurement. If you are interested in these topics, all recordings and presentations are available on our website. At the end of the webinar, a short survey will pop up on your screen. We would greatly appreciate if you could take 2 minutes to fill this in. This is also an opportunity to let us know about a specific policy topic you would like us to address in our policy webinar series. So don't hesitate to grab it. Today's topic is Towards InvestEU, Financial Products for the Social Impact Ecosystem. InvestEU is one of the funds of the next EU long-term budget, 2021-2027, which will bring under one roof a range of EU financial instruments that are currently available. Which financial tools will social finance providers be eligible for? How will InvestEU boost the social impact sector in Europe? We will discuss it today with 4 great speakers. Filippo Monisteri, Team Leader for Social Investment within the Treasury and Finance Directorate at DG ECFIN in the European Commission. Polyvios Eliofotou, Policy Officer in the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion at the European Commission. Silvia Manca, Head of Social Impact Programs within the Institutional Business Development Team at the European Investment Fund. Olivier Deguerre, President of the FITRUST, a French management company that focuses on the development of a responsible investment strategy. Let me introduce you the webinar's agenda. After my short introduction, Filippo will start with an overview of the InvestEU process. Afterwards, Polis will dive into the financial products of the social investment and skills window. Then Silvia will highlight the role of the implementing partners of InvestEU. And last but not least, Olivier will showcase the experience from a practitioner perspective and some expectations for EU funding opportunities. At the end of this presentation, we will have a Q&A session in which we will address your questions to the speakers. We will finish this webinar with an EVPA conclusion. During this webinar, we will try to clarify the framework of InvestEU with its 4 policy areas, also known as windows, focusing primarily on the social investment and skills. We will see which role the European Commission and implementing partners will play in the rollout of InvestEU and how financial intermediaries such as funds and foundations can contribute to or benefit from the InvestEU fund. Moreover, we will hear different experiences on financial instruments and EU funds. EVPA aims to put this knowledge together in order to build an open and constructive dialogue for the future implementation of the InvestEU fund. EVPA believes that the cooperation between policymakers and practitioners on the ground is fundamental to tackle the social and environmental challenges that the EU is facing at the moment. Now, please, Filippo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bianca. My name is Filippo Misteri. I work in DG ECFIN of the European Commission, where I currently work on the InvestEU program. Okay, so. Okay, so you now see the slide with the InvestEU key principles. InvestEU is one of the funds that we are preparing for the next programming period. As you might know, every 7 years, the European Union engages in a budget discussion. Sometimes can be painful, but it's an interesting moment to reshape a little bit our policy agenda. InvestEU builds a little bit on the experience gained already under the so-called Juncker Plan and the European Fund for Strategic Investment, which is currently ongoing. And as from the 1st of January 2021, InvestEU will replace the current instruments. InvestEU does not only replace the Juncker Plan, but it also replaces a number of financial instruments which the Commission has developed over time and are currently tackling different policy areas. One which is very relevant for this session, for instance, is the EASY program that my colleague from DG Environment, from DG Employment, sorry, will cover in a second. The key principles of InvestEU are exactly this one, a single fund with a single regulation, a single agreement with what we call implementing partners, which are the international financial institutions and the national promotional banks and institutions that will implement the program for us, as the Commission is not a bank as such. And of course, the access to the guarantee is open to different implementing partners, and this is an important change as compared to the current programming period, where the only implementing partner which we have is the EIB group, composed by the EIB and the EIF. The EIB group will remain, nevertheless, our most important partner, because it will implement 75% of the InvestEU guarantee. So the EIB and the EIF will continue to play a driving role in the implementation of the InvestEU. And the approach is very much a policy-driven one. The InvestEU is articulated through 4 different policy windows. The most relevant of which for the session today is the new social investment and skills window that my colleague Polyvius will give more detail to you in a moment. It's important to point out that this is a budgetary guarantee, so it's not a so-called funded instrument. It's a budgetary guarantee whereby we cover the risk with the investments done by the implementing partners, and through this budget guarantee we can cover the investments that the implementing partner will do, through equity, debt, or counter guarantee instruments. Other 2 important points. The member state compartment is the possibility we give to managing authorities in the member states to confer part of their structural funds to the InvestEU program. And by doing so, they would de facto transform some grants money into financial instruments and obtain an interesting leverage effect that the financial instruments can grant. In that case, they would not need to chip in the national co-financing that is needed for the structural funds. And last but not least, important, the new financial regulation has introduced the new rules that make blending between different instruments easier. And when I say blending, I refer mostly to the blending between a program like InvestEU based on financial instruments, and programs like Horizon 2020 or the Connect Europe facility, which are based on grants. So if we go to the next slide, perhaps you can see a little bit the architecture of the program, which this is a little bit similar to what we have today under the Juncker plan and the investment plan for Europe. So we have the InvestEU fund, an advisory hub, and an InvestEU portal. The advisory hub is, of course, a provider of technical advice, like project-related technical advisor, but also capacity building for market creation type of activities, whilst the InvestEU portal is on the line of the portal that already exists under EFSI today, under the Juncker plan, is a kind of matchmaking portal whereby the project sponsors can, if they want, portray the investment, and the investors can go and see if there is any type of fund or investment they might be interested to contribute. Again, here perhaps when it comes to the budgetary endowment, under the proposal of the European Commission, InvestEU will be endowed with a guarantee of 38 billion euros. This is 38 billion euros is provisioned at 40%, which means that only 15.2 billion will de facto weight on the European budget. And with the leverage effect that we'll explain in a moment, we will consider that we plan to mobilize up to 650 billion in additional investments in Europe. And here you see a little bit the programs which will be federated under the InvestEU programs. So here you might recognize some of the programs you are currently familiar with. And we go to the next. This is a little bit how does it work. So we have the 38 billion budgetary guarantee, which will be complemented by the resources by the implementing partners. So when we team up, for instance, with the European Investment Bank, of course, we require that the European Investment Bank or the other like implementing partners also contribute to give a financial contribution to our guarantee. So to align the interests, let's say. And we assume that we will get around 9.5 billion from the implementing partners, which will trigger, which will result in a guarantee of 47.5 billion, and with a leverage factor that we estimate at this point of 13.7 per, we should mobilize around this 650 billion euros. At the moment, we are well on track in the current program with the Juncker plan to mobilize 500 billion of euros over 2015-2020, let's say. But of course, those are just estimates which are doing ex ante. So of course, it's just a prediction. We go to the next slide, perhaps. This gives you an idea of the breakdown between the 4 different windows of InvestEU. We have one for the sustainable infrastructure window, which is very relevant in the context of the Green Deal that President von der Leyen is pursuing. We have the research, innovation and digitization window, the SME window, and the social investment and skills window. The budgetary guarantee has been divided, as you see in this column. The social window, let's say, is the smallest in size, but is the window that has been increased the most in budgetary terms as compared to what we have today. And the advisory hub is in our proposal endowed with 525 million euros. I'm saying in our proposal because here we are still waiting for the agreement between the co-legislator, the Council and Parliament to finalize the figures of the MFF, and this will come later in 2020. So we go perhaps to the next slide. This shows you, I mean, I'm not gonna go in detail, but this shows you a little bit how managing authorities or authorities that have funds in share management can, according to Article 10 of the Common Provisioning Regulation, decide to contribute maximum 5% of their structural funds allowance to a program like InvestEU, which is, of course, instead in indirect management from the European Commission perspective. We go to the next slide, perhaps. and this will show you a little bit how the guarantee is allocated between the European Investment Bank Group and the other potential implementing partners, and a little bit the timeline, the streams of work that we are currently undertaking with the potential implementing partners. So at the moment we are designing the financial products together with the interested parties and the banks, and this will result in a guarantee agreement between us and the implementing partner, which will detail the term sheets of the different financial products to be implemented. Let's go to the next one, perhaps, and this will gives you a short view of how does the European Investment Advisory Hub works today, and how, which is very much of a blueprint for what will happen in the future with the InvestEU Advisory Hub. This is interesting, perhaps, if you are already interested to promote a project in this programming period. A little bit, of course, the essence will stay in the next programming period, let's say. So the emphasis not only on project, on so-called project-related advisory, but also on more horizontal activities which might be interested if you are in a foundation, for instance, that want to provide advisory services together with one of the implementing partners that will put the banking capability, let's say. And if we go to the next one, this is the last slide. It gives you a little bit an idea of what we believe will be the roadmap towards the launch of InvestEU, which will happen the 1st of January 2021. At the moment, we are currently finalizing the so-called investment guidelines for the InvestEU fund, so where we define a little bit the overall framework in which we are going to operate. So what type of products we would like to pursue in the different policy areas. We will do a call for expression of interest for potential implementing partners in the first half of next year, and then we will proceed bilaterally, like with the negotiation on the guarantee agreements with the potential implementing partners. And this is interesting from the foundation side, because perhaps you can already approach what are the national promotional banks and institutions in your country or the IEB group to see what your contribution might be in certain in the policy area that you are most interested in. So I would stop like this. I'll say, and pass the ball to my colleague Polidius.
Yes.
Thank
you very much, Filippo, for this detailed overview on InvestEU. And yes, I would like to remind the audience that you already have the possibility to write your questions. Now, please, Polis, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, first of all, for the invitation, and thank you to the listeners. I would like, first of all, to start with the current programming period, where we stand today. I mean, in this period, we have the Employment and Social Innovation Program that you all most likely know, which is one of the many in the plethora of the programs using the financial instruments. And within the Easy Toolbox provides a kind of comprehensive ecosystem, if I may use the term, for the microfinance and social enterprises, because we have the financial instruments, which is the Easy Guarantee, the Easy Capacity Building, the Easy Funded, which is now, you see on the slide, at the time it was prepared, it was in the process of InMed, now it's in place. We have the FC Equity Social Impact, then we also have the grants, and then of course under the procurement we have the supporting technical assistance we provide. So this is where we stand today, with a kind of comprehensive support on the area of microfinance and social enterprises. I mean, now moving forward in the new programming period, we have in the InvestEU a dedicated social investment and skills window, which aim to address also the criticism on FC that was not sufficient socially sufficient enough. With each one, as Filippo just mentioned earlier, it's one of the 4 policy windows with a dedicated budget of 4 billion out of the 38 of the whole period. Despite being the smallest, it's not the one with the least ambition, I dare to say. I mean, it targets to address a kind of different policy objectives to, of course, create jobs, enhance the social resilience and inclusiveness of the Union, to strengthen the social dimension of the Union as it was underscored in the European Pillar of Social Rights, and of course to support interventions in the 3 policy priority areas. So the 3 policy priority areas, as you see, is the microfinance and social enterprises, and social, which expands under the social window to cater also for the space of the social impact to support the impact-driven enterprises as drivers of social change. Then it's also to cater for the area of education, training and skills, and last but not least, the social infrastructure and services, which includes, of course, health and education and training infrastructure. So these are the 3 policy areas, and I'm supposed to talk about the financial instruments in these 3 policies that will help deliver the policy objectives for these 3 areas. I mean, in a nutshell, we will have 4 delivery mechanisms as for most other windows, which is the direct debt and equity and intermediate debt and equity. And in the case of, for example, of microfinance and social enterprises and social impact driven enterprises, the aim is to address the difficulties in accessing the finance to start up and to scale up. And we aim to do this by continue providing what we currently have in the palette of available instruments, with a portfolio guarantee, with a fund, with equity investment in the social enterprises and impact-driven enterprises, and also to continue our support on the capacity building of intermediaries. Now, in the area of education, training and skills, we target to address the needs of learners, of employers, and also of the providers of the sector by supporting the skills for SMEs, the education and skills for individuals, which are better known with the individual learning accounts, and also for the providers of education training services and other related services. Now, in the area of the social infrastructure and services, we aim to cater for the needs of affordable social housing, which is one of the areas with huge needs. Of course, the natural question that arises is, how is it possible to cater with available resources for so large needs in this area? And exactly that's why we would like to have our intervention in the area of where we can bring most value added, which is the riskiest, so that to cater for the ones who are in real need, the ones who are the most vulnerable of the society. And this, of course, is to provide new housing, preferably also with accompanying services, and for the most vulnerable and the socially excluded, is also to follow the housing-led approach, which targets investments that combine the provision of housing units with person-centered, enable supporting services. So we also in this framework, we also try to target to enhance the social planning, the construction, reconstruction at regional and local levels that aim at social inclusion of the social categories I just mentioned. Let me just see what else can I say on this. In the area of course, not to forget, which is very important. I mean, we also want, in everything that I mentioned before, to provide services and infrastructure also for persons with disabilities, or address them, or address also in any kind of project to also address for persons with disabilities, and also the dimension of accessibility. And then we also aim to cater for the education and training infrastructure and services. And when I say infrastructure, not just the bricks and mortar, but also digital infrastructure. In the area of health, would like to contribute to innovative solutions that can bring most added value. We'll seek to explore all possibilities also with other windows, how we could possibly combine resources so that to cater for the needs of the health sector, both in terms of providing innovative solutions at the local level, with innovative solutions in delivery mechanisms, etc. And last but not least, we would like also to support the piloting of social outcome contracting schemes. This is what I have to say concerning the side of the financial products for the three policy priority areas. Of course, in the social window, investment as such would mean nothing if it's not accompanied by advisory support, which is project advisory, capacity building, and the development of the market. And that's why we insist that for the social window, the support of advisory services is primordial. It's crucial. Now, the question is, after telling you all these things, what's in it for you? I mean, one of the spaces for maybe of your interest, of course, is as co-investor in the financial products. But another dimension where we can have exchange of how you could contribute, it's also how could you be also involved on the provision of advisory services, either directly or through financing of efforts in this dimension. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Polis. I would like to remind the audience that you have the possibility to write your questions. And please, Silvia, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you for attending the webinar today. So I know that in the audience we have several people that are familiar with the EIF, but let me just give you a super quick introduction about who we are and how we operate. If we can go to the next slide, thank you. So the EIF, you've heard, is part of the EIB group. And when we talk about EIF, we talk primarily about financing small and medium-sized enterprises within Europe. How do we do that? We do that via an intermediated model, meaning that the financing that we channel from our mandators, notably the European Commission, the European Investment Bank, member states, managing authorities, and others, are not directly invested into the SMEs, but they are actually invested via financial intermediaries that belong to a great variety, from banks to microfinance institutions, to venture capital funds, to crowdfunding platform, and so on and so forth, in order to reach out to the level downstream, triggering what you heard before called the leverage effect. So crowding in additional investments and mobilizing additional investments and resources down the ground. Here you find summarized the key dimensions that I wanted to highlight. What is the geographical realm of EIF activities? It's primarily the EU 28, but also the associated countries and other countries that have opt-in specific instruments or specific programs run by the European Commission. How do we channel down these funds? Primarily via two business lines. On one side, equity investments, and on the other side, portfolio guarantees or uncapped guarantees and loans. Then we operate according to a generalist approach, but also according to thematic and vertical approach. We might have programs that are focusing on the pan-European reach, but also programs that are targeting one specific country or one specific region within a country. And we obviously try to catalyze and crowd in both additional public investments, for instance, by partnering with the national promotion institutions, and also obviously private investment. Now, if we move to next slide, the present. When it comes to the topic of the webinar today, meaning what we are doing and what we intend to do in the future in the field of social impact, you might know that the EIF has a long-standing commitment to this sector. Obviously, we are aware that the sector is very, let's say, diversified, and when it comes to the EIF, we operate within the space still of the small and medium enterprises size enterprise. That, when it comes to the program that we manage, are identifiable primarily via the micro enterprises and the social enterprises. Today, we have three main flagship programs that are fully dedicated to these sectors. We have the EASY program, which is the successor of EPMF. We have the European Fund for Strategic Investments that has contributed to increase the firepower of EASY on one side, and that has a dedicated window within the larger SME window segment of EFSI, dedicated to social impact. And then the Social Impact Accelerator. The first two, the EASY and the EFSI, are programs for which we have been entrusted for the implementation by the European Commission. The program that you see in pink, the Social Impact Accelerator, is a program launched by the EIB, the EIF, and with other private investors. Now, if we take stock about where we stand today, and if we sum up all the various initiatives that we are running since the very early days in 2010, when we were managing a small pilot in the field of microfinance, we have reached a level of more than 1.2 billion of resources dedicated to the microfinance and the social enterprise finance. Now, all this has been basically translated into financial instruments that are currently available to the market, and that belong to four main groups that you find on the right. We have portfolio guarantees, we have equity investments that then entail further granularity, we have investments aiming at enhancing the capacity building of an intermediary, so not to be confused with pure capacity building or advisory activities, and we have loans. To date, we have committed to financial intermediaries that are operating in the market in these various segments more than 770 million over time. Now, what is the rationale behind that? If we move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, in this kind of a dynamic slide, we have basically summarized or put together the development stage of the companies, because let's not forget that all the actions, all the financial products that we make available, they are made with the intention to support the financial intermediaries down the ground. Now, if we put all the tools that I mentioned on a continuum, we understand that the rationale of the various parties, the Commission, the EIB, the EIF, and all the other partners, is to create an integrated funding chain for these beneficiaries, providing bespoke solutions for each and every market segment, and trying to operate in a kind of complementary way. So you can see that the tools go from the very early stage, pre-seed and seed phase, up to the more development phase. Therefore, the rationale behind all of this is to respond to different market needs, enhance the availability of finance for these beneficiaries, therefore supporting them in their startup and scale-up process, create bespoke solutions, and last but not least, obviously, develop an ecosystem approach. If we move to the next slide. Thank you. You have received already from Polivios an overview about the EASY program, so the current existing instruments that belong, let's say, to the EASY family. So on one side, we have indeed the guarantee instruments, which is the CAP portfolio guarantees. We have then the capacity building instruments that consist of subordinated debt, quasi-equity investment in intermediaries with the objective to enhance their institutional capacity. And then the last, let's say, son of the family is indeed the so-called funded instruments, which aims at bridging the liquidity gap that certain intermediaries may face. And it provides senior and subordinated loans to this intermediary. When we talk about EASY, we have to bear in mind the following dimensions. We are talking about a program that encompasses two main strands, the microfinance and the social entrepreneurship, with some key characteristics for each of these two strands. And such characteristics also drive the eligibility requirements for intermediaries that are accessing these two windows, let's say. The geographical scope of these instruments is primarily EU member states, but also Albania, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Turkey, and Iceland. Now, few numbers in this respect. These instruments, left aside, let's say, the funding, which is very, very recent, they are experiencing a very strong market traction. To give you an example, the guarantee instruments, whose overall firepower is 400 million thanks to EFSI, is actually performing very well, with more than 260 million committed to intermediaries that aims to generate roughly 3 billion in terms of mobilized volumes for the benefit of microfinance and social enterprises. On the left-hand side, you have the impact investing tools that belong mainly to the equity space, and we have basically let's say, threefold strategies. First, investing in impact venture capital funds that in turn support investment in social enterprises. Then you have the investment into the very early stage part of the market by investing in funds that are linked to incubators and accelerator. And last but not least, you have payment by results investment schemes, a pilot that we indeed launched together with the Commission under EFSI, and that belongs to the overall family of the social outcome contracting. A note on this, these are current available tools that will remain available throughout also next year, basically until InvestEU kicks in. Now, if we move to the next slide, please. Now, we cannot obviously talk about the future if we don't take stock of the present. What are we observing when implementing this instrument? We are observing that years ago, we talked about social impact in a kind of niche way, and today it is not the case anymore. It is not the case because we do have an increasing number of a wider spectrum of companies that are pursuing intentional impact. We have an increasing number of specialized intermediaries that are reaching critical size. Therefore, they are able to magnify the impact at the level of the companies. We have new geographies on the rise alongside more mature markets. We have new models, new business models emerging. The investors community is spreading knowledge about impact. And on this basis, we therefore consider, certainly, if we go to the next slide, InvestEU as an opportunity. First, we have a dedicated window for social investment and skills. So this is, in my view, the biggest headline, and you have heard from the colleagues earlier on the rationale behind. In terms of role of the implementing partner. So the EIF indeed is implementing a number of instruments. So from our perspective, the InvestEU is an opportunity. It's a threefold opportunity. First of all, to continue to pursue this full spectrum approach, leveraging on the existing tools and also enhancing the existing tools whenever there is a need to change or to update certain parameters. Second, possibility to scale up instruments that are currently implemented on a pilot basis. They are showing actually a strong traction. And thirdly, to innovate, therefore think about further product development activities without, however, compromising on flexibility and avoiding fragmentation. Then, the possibility to create a one-stop shop to intermediaries for a multi-product offering in one place, and therefore ensuring a kind of fluidity of operations, thanks of a common set of criteria and streamlined processes. You have heard that there was indeed a webinar on the sustainability topic. Therefore, sustainability, the InvestEU is certainly an opportunity to place sustainability matters at the core of the operations. Then you've heard the type of policy priorities that we will pursue under the social investment in skills window. And it is therefore an opportunity to address policy priorities and market gaps even better. And the possibility indeed to crowding in additional capital from public and private investors. And for instance, foundations, for instance, corporates, for instance, other type of investors that are willing and they are seeking an access to this type of activities. If we move to the next slide. Now, you might be indeed familiar with the products that the EIF is managing. Now, we do expect, let's say, that under InvestEU, the access to market from such intermediaries might remain pretty much similar. And here I try to summarize in a very basic way, how do we see this running? So you see that at the beginning, we have the policy steer. And example of policies, as policies as mentioned earlier, is microfinance, social entrepreneurship finance, and skills-led education. How can we deliver on these policies? For instance, by financing structures that belong to the guarantee space, the equity space, or to other special structure. How the interesting parties are going to access this type of instruments? Via a call for expression of interest or an equivalent method. And it is important to understand that the market products that will be made available to the interesting parties will reflect the policy requirements. Therefore, it is important to always keep the policy at the center of the product design and the product implementation, because ultimately the policy will also driven the eligibility downstream. Now, if, I don't know, still a few minutes, Bianca, or I'm running out of time?
Yes, 2 minutes is fine.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you very much. Therefore, to summarize, let's say, under InvestEU, we will have indeed a variety of sectors that are made in accordance with the InvestEU regulation. And this granularity of sectors that has been clustered under the social investment in skills window into the three main groups that Polis mentioned earlier will also be reflected in the type of products that will be made available to the market. When it comes to the successor of the easy instruments, indeed, as I mentioned at the beginning, the market is proving that these instruments are working, and there might be a need indeed to review certain parameters, but the intention is indeed to build on this diversified product palette that we are currently implementing, both under the guarantees and under the equity. Another important element is that advisory and capacity building will also be an important component of the implementation of the financial instruments, Similarly, blended finance is also an area in which we are looking at. And last but not least, indeed, the sustainability topic will be certainly of importance for the implementation of these instruments. Now, if we move to the next slide, obviously, as also Filippo mentioned, the InvestEU architecture is still, let's say, in the making, in the sense that there are several details that are now in the process of being discussed and shaped. And on the EIF side, if we move please to the next slide. Yes, on the EIF side, we see pretty much our role building on what we have achieved so far and belonging mainly to three types of activities. Market developer on one side, therefore pursuing investment into a higher risk area where private investments are not yet ready to take ownership, therefore pioneering and invest into untapped segments. Market catalysts, therefore, support the crowding in of a diversity of capital from public to private, and then market access when it comes to more mature market that have, in any case, the need to be supported, let's say, in their scaling up process. And with that, I conclude, and I'll stand ready to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silvia. And please, now, Olivier, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you to give me the opportunity to present FitTrust and as a practitioner, our view on the future expectation of the market. Next slide. Next one. Next one. Sorry, it was okay. So FitTrust was created 15 years ago. There was no one was talking of impact investing, but we assumed that any company, big or small, can be involved in the emergence of solutions. So we have chosen to invest with large listed companies to develop their environmental, social, and governance practices through shareholder engagement. And we have invested in unlisted companies with innovative solutions and inclusive vision of society, education, integration, housing, etc. And our conviction is that as an investor, we can invest and support those who make a positive transition in their business model. And as shareholder, we have a real power to accelerate this transition. Next slide. So we've got three main line of business. We've got the first philanthropy on the right. We launched our first foundation in 2006 in France, and we joined EVPA at that time. We have a social impact investing fund, as we're going to talk a little later, and with practicing shareholder engagement with very large caps. Those three, I would say, activities, which 10 years ago seemed very, very separated, now are going on the same objective, same goal. How can we help social issues, environmental, social issues, and help those companies that want to change our world? Next slide. Okay. Social impact investing is really in the four impact in the universe. To come back to the presentation of EPA, invest with impact versus invest for impact. We have created a social environmental fund, which is FitTrust Partner in 2004. It was labelized USEF in 2014. We structured another fund in 2016, FitTrust Partner Europe, with the help of the EIF under the program. We were one of the first to combine financing and support with a unique network of executive and former managers that go in the corporates and help them to grow. And we are patient, meaning that there are companies who are invested in been 8, 10, 12 years. And we do believe that it's possible to demonstrate that you can invest with financial return and with a very big impact. And you've got some example you've got on the right. If you have question, I can express later. We have invested in France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Spain, and some investment in Africa. Next slide. So, how to accelerate change in scale? It was I want to express. Next slide. So, Why invest in social enterprises? We really do believe that social entrepreneurs are doing major innovations that respond to social issues, and they are an incredible force to transform society. So invest in those, we can accelerate very quickly. Capacity building is key, meaning that those entrepreneurs very need capacity building, just not money, just not cash. They also need support, mentoring, people that have been in medium, large companies that can help them to grow and accelerate in this very large market and help them to change if necessary. Social inclusion integration is imperative. We see it with the environmental transition, social transition. They are totally inseparable. But I want to stress is that patient capital is key. It's impossible to look for social impact with a 3, 5, 6 years vision. It's a 10, 15 years vision. And you got on the left a certain number of examples. In the middle, Lavarap, it was an NGO in Marseille, 3 million sales in 2006. Now in 2019, it's 45 million euro sales in a company that is the association, the NGO has a large stake in the company. It's profitable and it's going to go very quickly, and it's 100% dedicated to inclusion. Simplon, which is a company, it was an NGO first, putting people that have no job and want to learn how to be a code digital, to go in companies. They are going very quickly all over Europe, and they have a very strong development, but it took 10 years to develop the company. Lita, it's a platform for social crowdfunding. They're present in France, Belgium, and Italy now, but it's going to be long. It's not going to be in the 2-3 years that you develop the company. It's going to be much more than classical company would. So what I want to express is that the company or the entrepreneur we see, they have 2 needs. First, there are 3 needs. Money, of course, but first need is capacity building, and second is patience, because you cannot enter and come back and get out after 3 or 4 years because their business model is not sustainable, because they have to work with 2 things. First, they're looking for the sustainable and social impact aim, and second, it has to be financially sustainable. So it's very difficult to get those 2. The next slide, please. To come back to EVPA, that I suppose everyone knows, but it was very important for us is the difference between investing for impact versus investing with impact. And we really believe that there is a lot of people that are ready to fund and finance investments that are for impact. And you've got very large funds, a lot of money coming there. I would say the big money is there. But where there is very few people is on investing with impact, because there is low return and it's long term. So I really think that it's here that there's an enormous need today in the market. Next slide, please. So we see 2 different markets in the EU. Early stage development, we see it in many countries, many in Eastern countries, but in many countries we see it. The market needs support, mentoring to build structure, to have ideas and test them. So it's going to be through grants, donations, subsidies to build the organization, payment by results, social impact bonds, and very important regulatory framework. At FitTrust, we have an endowment fund which supports the reinforcement of NGOs and social enterprises focused on inclusion and integration. We have never had any benefit, any grants or subsidies from any public authorities. It's just private money at the moment. We know that there have been different subsidies offered by the EU, incubators, social, etc. But what I want to express that is that today it's very difficult when you do not know very well Brussels or EIF to find a way to where to go and whom to go in order to get this money that you can be looking at. There is an enormous need for that, because if you do not build ideas, if you do not test them, you will not have social entrepreneurs that will have success and solve issues. On the right side, it's acceleration of social enterprise. The market needs capacity development to build capacity and prove sustainability. So it's equity or quasi-equity, and you can have it. Debt or convertible loans, support and mentoring, and, which is very important, and very often hybrid model financing, meaning that you can have organization. For example, at Lavarap, there is an NGO and a for-profit company, and in those there is, I would say, grants or subsidies going to the NGO, and investments or loans or equity going to the for-profit company. And many projects, when they are at the beginning, need both to grow and accelerate. Our social investment fund, FitTrust Partenaire, which is the USEF, we invest 90% in Europe. Part of the portfolio is an hybrid financing. So we've been 25% funded by EIF. We benefited from guarantees from France BPI Public Bank. We don't have, and it's very difficult to find guarantees in Europe for the other EU investments. It has been a very good help from France for when investing in a social project in France to get a guarantee. I really need that guarantee on equity would be interesting. I think that at the moment it's just on loans. And there is also, I think, subsidies for mentoring that should be very important for funds like us because the cost of mentoring is very heavy. Up to now, we've got 25 investors in our fund that are pro bono supporting and helping those projects. But if I would say we have more and more projects to follow, it probably will not have enough. And I think many funds would have the same issue to have subsidies in order to mentor the projects they follow. Next slide, please. How to attract private capital, because I think it's the most important issue. Most private investors look for sustainable projects and high financial returns. Social projects need patient capital and capacity building funding, which is not provided by private investors. So investment need for projects is capital, equity guarantees, redeemable impact shares, debt, outcome-based with debt, capacity building, and if possible, outcome payment with outcome match funds. Investment for opportunity, we say today, InvestEU is going to propose tools that match all market needs. I think we need one counterpart by sector country to identify the tools available for us because it's very difficult to find our way. I think there is an issue with a regulator. If we take our USEF to give an example, which is we can sell it in many countries. The minimum investment is 100,000 euros in all Europe. If I go to Belgium, the regulator imposes 250 euros. And I can give many examples where the local regulation puts its own, I would say, way or local practices to EU regulation. So it's very difficult for different actors to see where to go. So it could be an issue to help that the EU helps the local regulators to be more flexible or to have a unified view when there is something. Impact, very important. We will not solve issues very quickly. And the measure of impact is important, but it's going to be long term. And if we have very small projects, it's very costly to measure impact. So I think it's going to be a long process and not a very easy process. And finance, I think financial returns will, as I already said, will be low. We said to our investors today, if we're very good, we're going to give you 3–4% return. We never give 7, 8, 10% return. And many investors look for high returns. EVPA has worked with its members to identify market failures and social needs. Main things that have been identified, mainly lack of capital, need of flexible funding schemes, need of capacity building, and also a larger promotion of EU tools that are not well known by the different actors. We are close to different actors in France, I would say Spain, Portugal, Italy, Belgium, Germany, and I see many actors that do not know very well what could be possible to raise or to find in the EU funding. They know relatively well and not very well their own local funding, but they do not know well EU funding. So I think there is a very strong issue of communication and simplicity. Next slide. For the future, I think there is two things for the future. First, it's clear that what is very important is that everyone works together. And I think in 15 years, many people have worked together. Foundation, cooperatives with social impact funds. And I think a lot of barriers have now vanished. We do believe also there is enormous potential with very large corporates. Usually, which are not very often, but I took two examples because we know them well, because we've worked with them, it's been 10 years, Schneider Electric and Danone. Schneider Electric has a program allowed by the foundation, which is an energy microfinance program for access to solar energy, a BBOP program within the Schneider Foundation in order to develop and fund very local projects, and also an investment fund. All of those are together within and embedded in the strategy of the company. Danone, the same. There is Livelihoods Fund, which is for, I go first, I would say financial system restoration. Danone Community Fund with Yunus, that you know what everyone knows, and Danone Ecosystem, which is an endowment fund for their ecosystem, also embedded in such a company. Those two companies are helping and help the medium, small entrepreneur to grow, to accelerate, etc. For example, Lavarap has a very interesting program with Schneider Electric, which is very interesting. And I think there is a lot of potential with those very large corporates. So my feeling is that in the next program for the EU, you should not only put foundations, cooperatives, social funds together, you should also look at large corporates, because they may need help, support to liaise, to link with those small organizations and be much more inclusive, because they're still all looking together for more inclusiveness in our world. Well, I'm sure that I forgot many things, but thank you very much, and I'm ready to answer a lot of questions if you have.
Thank you very much. Now we can start the Q&A session. Actually, we have many questions today. The first question is for Filippo. You talk about blending. Will it be possible to combine funding from InvestEU with, for example, grants from the European Social Fund Plus? How will this work in practice?
Yes. So the combination between InvestEU and funds in share management like the ESF Plus is possible, but unlike the combination with other programs managed directly to from Brussels, like the Horizon 2020, for instance, the combination is only possible at the level of the project. So you will not be able to benefit from the single set of rules which applies to the to the programs which are directly managed by Brussels, whereby, for instance, let's assume an example of combination Horizon 2020 InvestEU, the regulation of Horizon 2020 will tell you where the rules of Horizon Europe stop and are not to be applied any longer. Let's imagine for reporting, for instance, and when the InvestEU rules start applying. So it will be kind of sequential. For the combination with the share management funds, which is a possibility, of course, this will happen at the project level, and the project will have to respect the two sets of rules of the two different programs. So the share management program, like the ESF Plus, and the InvestEU ones. So it is possible. Of course, we cannot finance like 100% of the project cost. So it goes without saying that you cannot have a project which is covered, let's say, 50% by the EU guarantee under InvestEU, and the other 50% is granted by the ESF Plus. But it is possible, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Filippo. Now we have also a question for Silvia Manca. How does the EIF differentiate between its roles, catalyst, market builders, and market access? Does the EIF have different requisites and offers for each one?
Thank you. So the reality is that we do not adopt this approach in silos, not at all. But the overall objective is indeed to have an harmonized development of the ecosystem. I can give you practical examples. For instance, with the pilot that we launched under FC that are in the field of social impact, one primary objective was indeed to support the very early stage of the market and to support those maybe social enterprises that are leaving maybe the philanthropic space, and actually they are in their journey towards the scaling up process. And for that, we have a very specific rule. For instance, we can sometimes take more than 50% of the funds. We have, for instance, the European Commission is running alongside the cost for transactional support to provide for a booster, let's say, for the establishment of the intermediaries. So that we see as a role of more of a market developer, because the idea is indeed to support the establishment of new intermediaries, new business model, and to operate when there is maybe a lack of private investments or other type of investments that are actually interested in accessing this market segment. And it is actually a role to build the, let's say, the breadth of the market. Now, if you move towards the right, then it becomes more of building the depth of the market, in the sense that we don't want to stop our support just to the early stage, but we believe that for an harmonic development of the sector, we do need also to support in their journey towards the growth, also other intermediaries and in turn enterprises that might have already reached a certain level, let's say, of maturity, but they still need public support in order to keep growing. And therefore, we might have different, for instance, different conditions. But we see more these three categories alongside a continuum and not in silos, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question for Polis. With EC, there is the perception that it is difficult for funds and foundations to get access to the EU guarantee, as opposed to banks. Will this change with InvestEU?
Well, thanks for the question. I mean, the idea is under the InvestEU to cater for the deficiencies and the weaknesses of EASY. So, and also, I mean, the discussions in the GEGES group, to which EVPA is a member, I mean, raised the issue and it was discussed. And certainly, I mean, the idea is to cater for this weakness. Of course, currently we are in the process of elaborating the exact products, but in principle, we should try to address this weakness.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question for Silvia. Can special structures of financial products also include revenue-based financing schemes?
I mean, it's too early to say, in the sense that maybe yes. I don't want to preempt any type of decisions, but what I meant with the slide is that maybe most of the market participants are familiar with the typical guarantee and equity, because so far we've been deploying that. So the idea is also to have other type of maybe innovative or structures that we are piloting. But when it comes to InvestEU, the architecture and the product design is still in the making. And as Polis just said, it will try, let's say, also to match to address the market needs, the market gaps, and intervene where the EU support is most needed. So I can't really say at this point what would be included in the in each of the boxes, also because it was supposed to be just an example.
Okay, thank you very much, Silvia. We have another question for Filippo. Is it considered for InvestEU to introduce a financial instrument with equity guarantee for financial intermediaries, like Olivier de Guerre is suggesting?
Oh, yes, we are looking at this possibility. Yes, of course, as I said a little bit in my presentation, we have to respect the overall 40% provisioning of the guarantee. So, of course, when it comes to, let's say, I don't know, imagine an equity fund where our guarantee would cover all the first loss piece, or even in a capped guarantee structure like the ones we have under EASY, where the cap is put at the level of the expected losses of the portfolio. For us, the expected losses is 100% basically of what we fund. So we are looking, yes, at these innovative structures together with the potential implementing partners, including the EIF, but it's too early to say what we will be able to do and the magnitude that these instruments might be doing, because equity is extremely consuming in terms of capital, let's say, so for us. So we had to, it's a weapon that we had to use sparingly, let's say.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question for Silvia. How can financial intermediaries go ahead from here? Where are the entry points for joining the InvestEU framework?
So the InvestEU, so to access the InvestEU framework is too early now, in the sense that the official, let's say, kickoff date will be 2021. But what is currently possible now is to access the tools that are currently valid. When it comes to the EF, obviously, there are other tools that are implemented, for instance, by the EIB. When it comes to the specific realm, we do have on our website all the various access points for the product palette that we mentioned at the beginning. So for the easy product family and for the more equity space. So it is either the application via the official call for expression of interest, or for instance, when it comes to equity activities, also the submission of the PPN, for instance, of the pitch, let's say, the value proposition of the fund. But the access point is actually available on our website, and also there are relative information on the European Commission website. I'm happy to follow up with the specific indications. One comment I would like to make also, building on the presentation of Olivier, indeed, we are aware of the fact that there is some fragmentation and some communication bridges that needs to be eliminated in the InvestEU, and we are indeed working towards an harmonic communication, precisely to build this one-stop shop that might ease the research, let's say, of the intermediaries when they are trying to access financing, or also of the entrepreneurs when they are trying to see, for instance, what is available in their respective country for their specific needs.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just add something on this communication? Yes. I mean, and thank you to Olivier for raising the point of communication, because it's an issue that we come across quite often. I mean, not only in the context of looking ahead of InvestEU, but in the current context. And I think it's important. I mean, for everyone to play our role. Us as Commission, we will assume the role to play and learn from the experience of the current framework of how to improve things. But going forward, I think there are possibilities to explore also through a number of networks and associations, also ones benefiting from EU support, of how, and they are closer to the ground, of how to be catalyst of communication and simplify the messages we are trying to send, and also the possibility of available instruments to the end recipient. I mean, we heard in the context of the Gilets jaunes of how what the EU can do. But when I'm thinking about the instruments we have in place to support microfinance and social enterprises, which are addressed to the most vulnerable, I mean, I'm quite surprised, to be honest, to hear that the EU Commission is not active in the area. If there is one thing, is that we are active, and we would expect also, for example, networks we support and with their members, of course, and which are closer to the end recipients to inform about the various actions we are trying to do. And of course, this without discounting the role that the Commission or our implementing partners, which do a great job, we will try to do.
And I also would like to add that EVPA is working a lot to reinforce this bridge between policymakers and practitioners on the ground, and this webinar is actually a good step for doing this also in the InvestEU framework. We have another question for Olivier. How are you measuring your portfolio impact? Olivier?
Yes, we have looked at many, I would say, tools, techniques, etc. And we're now at a much simpler vision of how to measure impact. Impact measurement is for us a tool, a strategic tool for the company to organize itself in order to be sure that they're going to comply with their social objective. It means that we define with the team 2, 3, 4, 5 impact objectives that have to have in the next 3, 5, 7 years. And then we help them to be sure that all the organization is organized to fulfill with those objectives and that it's in the heart of the decision of the company. And then we go further, meaning that in the end, we're going to compare what has been done with what was decided a few years ago. EIF, when they came in our fund, put us carried interest on the investment. Carried interest, it means that if we do more than 5% return for our investors, we're going to give about 20% of the performance over 5%. Normally, it's attributed to the team. We gave it to our endowment fund, and this, say, carried interest is structured along a social impact objective, meaning that if we met with the social impact objective that we decided 5 years before or 7 years before, it depends, then we are able to get, we will be able in the future to get the carried interest. If we do not met with the social objectives, we will not have the carried interest. So it's a way, I would say, first the way that we have structured our objective, it's a discussion with the team and an objective 3-5 years, and then the way that EIF asked all the funds to have, I would say, a social objective embedded in the strategy of the funds, so putting it in the carried interest that is delivered to the team managing those funds.
Okay, thank you very much. This was our last question. I would like to thank all our speakers of today for your speeches and for this interesting exchange of knowledge. We heard how the European Commission wants to boost the social impact ecosystem through the InvestEU fund, the fundamental role of the European Investment Fund as implementing partner, and which role the financial intermediaries can play in tackling the different policy objectives. We also heard about the different impact strategies within the impact investing ecosystem and the diversification of stakeholders acting in this sector. Indeed, as the sector has evolved, attracting more and more organizations, EVPA sees the emergence of a spectrum of impact strategies. On one side, there are investors for impact who take risks that no one else can or is willing to take, putting the business model of the social organization at the center. On the other side, there are investors with impact who want to put their money to a good cause, but need to guarantee a financial return. EVPA believes that the distinction of investing for and investing with impact might guide various actors and capital towards the different policy windows of InvestEU. Indeed, understanding which social issues require which support and capital and identifying the right kind of finance provider would help to reach the EU policy objectives. Also, I would like to thank all our participants today and to remind you that a recording of this webinar together with the slides will be available on our website soon. In addition, I would kindly remind you that a short survey will pop up on your screen. We would greatly appreciate if you could take 2 minutes to fill this in. It is also an opportunity to let us know about a specific policy topic you'd like us to address in our policy webinar series. So don't hesitate to grab it. Thank you for attending this webinar and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bianca, may I just say one thing?
Yes.
Because obviously, I mean, we didn't cover a lot of topics, obviously, so I think you will find in the slides that will be made available our contact, so please do not hesitate to reach out to me or to the team for any further curiosity or questions that the debate today has stimulated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silvia. Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye-bye.